Welcome to another episode of the IBC Guys. It's a good day. If you're watching on YouTube, you already know why it's a good day. If you're listening, it's because Mike Stevens is back on the podcast today. Mike Stevens,
I'm
long time no
back.
see. Now, I think everybody would guess that you are a big fan of the 1980s rapper LL Cool J. Is that correct? Well, the
I
reason I
know.
say that is because one of his most famous songs is Mama Said Knock You Out, which I'm sure you know. And the first line in that song is, "Don't call it a comeback." And I think that's appropriate. So he's saying, "Don't call it a comeback. I've been here the whole time, just like you have been. I may not have been on the podcast, but you and I talk pretty much, not every day, but consistently throughout the week and helping with policies. But I'm glad to have you back on the podcast to share your wisdom and insight in the IBC world with everybody out there listening. All the millions of people that listen to the podcast, Mike.
Yes, millions.
Yeah. So I think the other I shared it on the last podcast. The other thing that we have to briefly touch on because we got a cool topic today is you bought your first pair of Jordan ones. So I feel like that's something that we need to celebrate. Maybe you lift your foot up and show everybody on YouTube because I'm sure you have them on right now, right? No, you
No.
don't. I know. So, but I'm
The
excited about
thing
that.
that's interesting about, all right, so we're going down the rabbit hole of the Jordan ones or the Air Jordans period. Like Dave is one of those, I think respectfully, you would say you're a sneakerhead. That's not a derogatory.
Compared to others, I'm not. I've always enjoyed it since high school. I've collected them for
But
whatever.
a sneakerhead, if someone is like really into shoes like you are, to say, yeah, he's a sneakerhead, is that not a compliment?
Yeah, I'm sure it can be.
Okay.
Um,
But aside from, if you don't know what a sneakerhead is, and I'm not saying I do, but someone that's very much into the sneakers and the years and the colors and
yeah,
the cost and you can look at someone wearing Air Jordans and tell them what year it was released and probably the name of the collar scheme and the nickname to go with it, most likely,
yeah.
correct?
Usually it's the nickname, the colorway. Yeah, what the
Yeah.
nickname is.
Anyway, so Dave is a sneakerhead. He's huge into that. I am not, but
We're getting you
what
there. You're getting there.
what Dave, I don't know, realized prior to this last week is that Michael Jordan's only 2 years older than I am. So when the Jordans came out, like I was a freshman in college when I think he played 2 years in North Carolina and then he signed with the Bulls. So he was at his first year with the Bulls when I was at my first year of college. And when those Jordans came out, like everybody had a pair. So Dave, being super young, he's looking back like, oh man, these antique collectors. I'm like, dude, I had 10 pair of those. I mean, I threw them away. We wore them out.
Well, they're worth tens of thousands of dollars now if you get a decent
Yeah,
condition.
well, the reason why is because me and everybody else, I mean, we played in them for years and sweated and they fell apart and we chucked them. We threw them in the trash and bought something else. So,
Yeah.
but
Well,
yes,
we're
I
getting you
did
on your
buy.
way.
That's kind of a long story as to why. But this
Oh,
weekend, I bought a pair of Jordan
hey.
ones to wear to my two boys' basketball game. So there we go. I did
Well, if you can't tell, if you're listening, Mike's super excited about it. I think he's
that.
intrigued at the subculture that exists there. Is that a fair statement?
Super intrigued. So again, you know what this reminds me of? I'm gonna take another hard left here.
Uh-oh.
This
Okay.
reminds me of another podcaster who has millions and millions of viewers, just like us, right?
Just like us. Yeah.
Joe Rogan. Is he not the biggest
I'm
podcaster
sure he's one of them. I
in?
have no
Yeah.
idea.
So anyway, Joe Rogan, just as an example, Aaron Rodgers. I think everyone knows Aaron Rodgers. I mean, he's going to be first ballot Hall of Famer, played for the Packers. Then he went to the Jets. And then I believe this year is his first year with Pittsburgh.
Correct. Yep.
So he's kind of moved around. And then I was looking at Joe Rogan podcast just because I don't listen to the radio on the road when I'm driving. I'll listen to, a podcast. And I'm like, oh, Aaron Rodgers. Oh, man, they're going to talk about like his new contract, his new team, how it was, animosity towards the Packers or lack there. I mean, just like, oh, man, I'm going to get the inside scoop. Aaron Rodgers comes on. He is an NFL quarterback and is known for being an NFL quarterback. He goes on Joe Rogan for 3 hours. Not once was football mentioned, anything related to football. They're talking about crazy different stuff the entire time. So anyway, I throw that out. Like, I'm sorry for the tens of people that tune in.
Oh, okay.
Hey, I want to learn about IBC today. And these knuckleheads are talking about Air Jordans and what puppies and what were we just starting to talk about? To the game, the culture. Okay, so another parent is a sneakerhead like Dave, and it's kind of a long story, but we're killing time. We were in Kansas, killing time before a basketball game, and basically went to a Nike store. And he, like Dave, you should really buy some Air Jordans, Mike. You should buy. And I made the comment like, dude, they got the OGs, the originals, like the first ones that came out. In my size, like, I'll buy them. The ones that came out in 1985, 87, whatever the year was. Mm. Little did I know that they make reproductions, or they're called retros.
Retros, yeah.
So I go into this Nike store and they have the OGs, the black and red, the Jordan 1s, and they had one pair in the entire store left. One pair. And the right one or left one was up on display. And it's a size 13. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. And I didn't know that. Oh, well, they make these reproductions of them all the time. And then to add to that, I put them, he's like, let's wear them. So he bought a pair and we wear them to the game to look like, well, he's young like you. He's 20 years younger than me. But I mean, I walk in, maybe not 20, maybe he's 10. You're 20 years younger than me. He's probably 10 years younger than me. I don't know. Anyway, we walk in, so we wear them to the game just to be stupid, right? And one of my boys, the first thing he notices is like, what? This old man's got Jordan 1s, not just Jordans or new shoes, but he's like, dude, you got the OG 1s on. I'm like, what's the OG? I mean,
do you know what OG stands for? Let's pause. Do you know what OG stands for?
The original gangster?
Yeah, that's correct. So it's become kind of an homage or a synonym. I don't know what a good better word is for the original of something, the OG.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So anyway, there's a game before us. We're playing in like a, kind of a preseason classic tournament with some other colleges, and the basketball team playing in game 2, they normally sit behind the basket just kind of for the first half, check out the first game, and then at halftime they'll go in the locker room and get dressed to get ready for their game in game 2. So all of the boys, all of the basketball team, including my other son, are sitting there up in the stands, and parents that you can go and you can sit with your kid and chat, because when these teams travel, I mean, there's film, there's team dinners, there's the team hotel. Like it's not like back in the day when they were 12, when you had them and you had to take them to dinner and there's very little interaction with college basketball. So anyway, there's a bunch of parents sitting there. That there was a game on Saturday already, so I'd seen all the boys. They all know, I know them, they know me, blah blah blah, whatever. So kind of that introduction, it wasn't like, Mike, hey, I saw them all yesterday. So long story longer, Luke, my son, is like, dude, I cannot wait for you to walk up, and I can't wait to see the team's reaction. And I literally am like, what are you talking about? I mean, I saw all those guys yesterday. Maybe a couple of them, you walk in, a couple of them hey, just, what's up, kind of give you a little head nod, but that's it. Like most of them are on their phone, maybe watching the game. They're not even going to notice me walking in. We walk in, and every single one of those players instantly are like, dude's got Jordan 1s on. Like, what? Mike's got Jordan. That's when I realized, like, dude, this is a cult. This is a following of, I mean, these kids, they're 20 something, 18 to 22 ish, right? College.
Yeah.
Like, it was unbelievable to me, the knowledge and the following. And I mean, it was nuts. So
It
anyway,
is certainly a subculture that exists there. That is 100% true. But it's something. I mean, you were teasing me yesterday about trying to look cool, and I just have always enjoyed it. And it's just kind of the way my parents thought I was crazy growing up. But I always had to play because I played through high school. I had to play in Jordans, so it was always a conversation with the coach, that kind of stuff. I've always have. My boys have them now. It's just kind of been a thing. So could I probably spend my money in better ways? Yes. Do I thoroughly enjoy the subculture? I do. So I don't know. It's been fun to talk to you about the last couple of days. Getting your first pair, the first of many. And I
well, like
tease
I
my
said, that's kind of how this came up when you said, "Oh, you got your first pair of Jordans, Dave." This isn't my first pair of Jordans.
well, that's true. You had them back in the day. The first
I don't
pair
even
that
know
I've
how
ever
many
witnessed you purchase. I've never seen them on your feet either. So let's be fair there. I mean, I haven't known you super long, but so first pair to me. We'll qualify it that way. But to your point, we have digressed. I'm excited to have my friend back on the podcast. But let's go back to talking IBC things and life insurance product things. So this podcast exists for three reasons. The first reason is to get information about IBC out there. We want you to make knowledgeable or have the information to make knowledgeable, informed decisions on whether or not IBC is for your family or not for your family. Either way, as long as you feel comfortable in having the knowledge, either way you decide is great with us. The second reason is to provide implementable, actionable examples. So I don't know if we'll really get into that today based on the discussion that we're planning on having, but hopefully other podcasts you found that to be the case. I will say I went back and looked at some of our stats, Mike, and the ones where we highlight or talk specifically about actionable items are often our most listened to topics. So we'll have to keep doing things like that, like how to buy a
So
car, how to
this
buy
won't
real
be one
estate.
of them then, as far as
Correct, but I think it's important to talk about. So I'm just saying, statistically, statistics aren't everything because you can make them tell the story you want. But those tend to be our higher ones. So that's the second reason. The third reason is to get it out to as many people as you can. So if you would share, like, subscribe, do all the social media stuff, that it just helps the podcast. Not that you owe it to us, but if you find this intriguing, send it to others that may find it helpful or intriguing. And again, the goal is to reverse the flow of money away from your family and make it flow back to your family and build some legacy wealth. That's the goal. So the topic today, I did a podcast, I guess it would be 2 episodes ago at this point, on Kyle Busch. It's been pretty big news. And Mike, I kind of joked with the listeners that I'm sure everybody's, staying on top of their life insurance news, kind of facetiously, but it's been in ESPN since then. Motorsports did an article on it. So I think because of the name that's associated with it in terms of Kyle Busch, it's kind of become a thing. But essentially, he is suing Pacific Life, who is a life insurance behemoth, stating that the agent Pacific Life, I think they've included like under the wholesaler, if I remember correctly. There's a lot of people involved in their lawsuit, in saying that they are not getting what was promised to them. So much more has come out since then. So hopefully going to provide some more details. So this is all public knowledge. Obviously, Mike and I didn't do the investigative journalism ourselves, so we're citing other sources, and I'll include some of those in the show notes. But there's always two sides to a coin. But really, what we kind of want to talk about is this whole situation was predicated or revolved around an IUL. So we kind of wanted to revisit that. There's always the shiny object syndrome, and IULs are they're good for very, I would say, a minimal amount of people that exist out there. So we'll talk a little bit about that, but then why we build the IBC policies around whole life policies and not necessarily around IULs. Which again, we've said many times, you could. IBC is a mindset, a theory. It's not the actual product. So you could implement IBC with an IUL if you chose to. It's Mike and I's opinion that's not your best option. So the goal today, Mike, and certainly add to what I just said, but the goal is to kind of talk around those things. So as I said all that, anything come to mind? And maybe even kick us
Well, it's
off.
not just our recommendation. I mean, everyone in the IBC community, most everyone, that would be the recommendation. Nelson Nash, the true godfather of, as you say, the godfather of IBC, the pioneer of IBC. He says it in his book, excuse me, Becoming Your Own Banker. He talks about that. Like, this is not the place for an IBC cash flow system, meaning IULs are not the place. It's a whole life policy, and it goes through the reasons. So, excuse me. So yeah, it's IBC. The infinite banking concept really has nothing to do with a life insurance policy. That is just the vehicle that we use to run the infinite banking system through. So, aside from that, there's reasons, pros and cons of why the whole life policy is the best vehicle versus a UL, which is a universal life, or an IUL, which is index universal life, which are still permanent insurance, but it's not the best. And we can get into the weeds on why that isn't the best and why a whole life is better. And we can talk about all those things, but that's the issue at hand here, I guess, with the Busch situation.
Yeah, and let's maybe use the Busch situation as a catalyst. So they did, and again, I said more information came out. So I was telling Mike before we jumped on, there were three things that kind of stood out in the journalism that was conducted, the research, investigative journalism, whatever you want to say. The first was the agent that sold them. I shouldn't say sold them, helped them secure the IUL was a convicted criminal. So he had convictions on his record. The second part of that is he lied about that fact on his insurance application to the state of North Carolina. So the state of North Carolina still gave him, I mean, it's my understanding, Mike, across all states that if you are a convicted, I don't know, felon or even misdemeanor, I don't know what the threshold is. But if you're a convicted criminal, you are not allowed to have a license to produce insurance. Is that, I don't know, maybe you don't know the answer to that either. But
I don't, but I think that's with any I mean, a peace officer license, a real estate license, an adjuster license, I mean, all of those, yeah, if you're a convicted felon, I think that's going to be a deal breaker in most every state. I'm not certain, but I mean, certainly it's a huge red flag that I think was blatantly overlooked.
so, and my point is not necessarily to focus on the act itself, but I think it speaks to the character, maybe the agent, is what I'm getting at. And again, that's all an assumption. I don't know the man. We're not going to say his name on here. If you want to go look it up, it's in the public news. But that's the first thing. The state of North Carolina did not double check that, fact check the application, provided him a license. Neither did Pacific Life. So I think that was part of the lawsuit that the Bushes, they discovered that, included it in the lawsuit. The second key point to all this is it is reported, again, I have not personally seen the policy. I haven't seen the premiums that have been funded, but it has been reported that the Bushes only paid half of the contractual premiums. I should, maybe contractual is the wrong word, but the premium that was supposed to go
Premium,
every year.
sure.
Well, I guess contractual. I'm getting into do IULs is it's not necessarily a contract because there's nothing guaranteed. So maybe that's all semantics. Again, you can get weighed down by all that. But the point of the second topic that I found interesting is the Bushes only did half the job. They only paid half the premium they had committed to, and that will blow up any policy, whether it's an IUL, whether it's a whole life. it's not good when you only do half the job you were committed to doing. Um, but the third thing is the IUL itself, and this is maybe kind of the jumping or launching off point where we talk, Mike. IULs in and of themselves are not bad, but I do believe they bring more risk because of all the variables that are involved. So the agent is always a variable. Again, I said it last week on the podcast. If Mike and I, if we don't resonate, there's no connection as for the listener, let us introduce you to somebody else where there is a connection so you can get an IBC policy. We wholeheartedly believe that we just would much rather have you have an IBC policy. But I say that because the agent is a variable in this. The client's actions are a variable. Are you going to pay your premiums? Are you going to repay any loans you take back? Are you going to do those things that are requested or maybe even necessary in the growth of the policy? So those are variables, but then you throw in the variability of an index. So there's no contractual guarantee or guarantees. The guarantees die off in an IUL, and then you're working on hypotheticals. But to throw in that variable into the mix as well, just kind of in the Kyle Busch case, kind of created the perfect bad storm is maybe kind of what we're seeing coming out the other end. So what are your thoughts on that, Mike? Agree, disagree? Anything you want to add to that?
Oh, no, agreed. So I guess two things come up. One, I think it probably benefit people to understand the difference between a whole life policy and an IUL. Like
Yeah,
what
yeah,
we just stated that Nelson Nash himself and us, we believe that the IUL is not the vehicle for the infinite banking concept that a whole life policy is. We should probably just touch on what the major difference is there. And then secondly, even within that, I mean, it's not just like, well, here's an IUL policy and an agent just sold them an IUL policy, or we, set someone up in a whole life policy or whatever. We have, and we just did this recently, Dave and I had run across a client who had a quote unquote IBC policy with a mutual company
yeah,
that was designed with the infinite banking concept in mind. And it was an absolute disaster.
yeah. It was
So
tough.
just understand that, I mean, kind of, the expertise that Dave and I have is that we are, we're trained and knowledgeable. I don't know if I'd say experts, but that's what our expertise is designing these policies around the infinite banking concept and we design them differently. There's not one way to do it. It's client specific on what their needs and desires are as to how to do that. Maybe a good example is, I haven't thought about this, but maybe a good example is like building a house. Like we're builders and we're gonna sit down with a new homeowner that wants us to build them a house, and where one person would be like, I want a 3-car garage. I'm a he's, what do they call those guys? They're a wrench
Ranch
head,
head.
they just love I have a buddy that was looking for a house, and the realtor's like, what are you looking for? He's like, I want to pay $200,000 for a house. I want $150,000 garage and $50,000 house. Okay, well, those are kind of hard to find, but his point is, I don't care how nice the house is. If it doesn't have a garage that allows me to do my passion and working on vehicles and stuff, I don't want it. So, and then there's and people, I guess with the home analogy, you can understand, like, yeah, people, one wants a big kitchen, one wants many bedrooms, and one wants in the country, in town. There's a ton of different variables when people are building a house. It's not just one cookie cutter, one policy fits all, so to speak. So with the design, there's a lot that goes into the design of that policy. And we've seen, again, IBC whole life policies that are a disaster because I don't think that person's expertise was in designing a banking policy. It was probably designed to what's going to give him the best,
Yeah,
return. So anyway, with that being said, there's a lot of variables. It's tough to put a cookie cutter on there and say, oh, well, it's an IUL policy. It was just, it's bad, just right. That's kind of unfair to do. There are some advantages of an index universal life policy, an IUL. However, and going into the second thing, the major differences, and the reason why Nelson and Dave and I and most people in this IBC community don't use that is because number one is the guarantee.
Mhm.
Meaning when you're, let's say, 80 years old, with a whole life policy, there is a guaranteed death benefit bound by contract, bound by law, that death benefit is going to be there for your beneficiaries, family, etc. Guaranteed. If you look at a guaranteed, the guaranteed illustration inside of an IUL, when you're 80 years old, on most of them, I mean, all of them eventually go to zero, but most of them in that, let's just say that 80-year-old range, the guaranteed death benefit and cash value is zero by design, is zero. And so again, that's number one, that's a deal breaker there. I don't even want to look at number two. Number three, I want the guarantee. We want the guarantee because we're all about, legacy, guaranteed cash value. I don't want to see anyone put in X amount a year for their entire life. And then when they're, 80 years old, they have nothing. They literally have nothing. So that's the main deal breaker for me with an IUL. And just real quick, like, okay, well, how can that be? Do we have time for this? Just to go back.
Oh, we got time, Mike.
We got
You're back
time.
on the podcast. We got all the time in the world.
So in a nutshell, so let's look at a whole life. A whole life policy is you put in X amount every year. It's like a house. You buy a house, you pay X amount a month or X amount a year for 30 years based on this interest rate and et cetera, et cetera. At the end of that 30 years, you will own that house. Guaranteed. You do your part. You miss a payment, well, then we have to have a discussion. But you put in X amount over time, there's going to be a guarantee there, and that's you own the house, right? Term insurance, and you're like, well, wait a minute, we're talking about IULs and we're talking about whole life. What's this term?
Yeah.
An index universal life has a term component inside of it. Okay.
That's
the
what
death benefit in an IUL is a term policy. It's not a permanent policy. Hence, there's no guarantee. At 80 years old, that death benefit should be permanent, and it's not. It's gone. And we'll talk about that. Term insurance, back to the housing example, is like renting a house. You pay so much a month rent, and you do that for 30 years. At the end of 30 years, you have zero cash value. It's not your house. You're renting the house. And term insurance is you're renting the insurance, where permanent is you're buying the insurance. So back to the IUL. It's not permanent. It's a term, in a sense. There's companies now are like, well, wait a minute, technically, legally, we don't have, it's not a term, it's just and they call it something different, but basically it's a term policy that increases in cost as you get closer to death. Okay, so
all term insurance does, Mike. I mean, that's all term
insurance. All term insurance has zero cash value, and it goes up every single year. It's a term. It's like your insurance, your homeowner's insurance, your car owner's insurance, your health insurance. All those are insurance policies that have a term, which are all 1 year term on your house. You pay it every year, and it probably goes up a little bit every year. And your car insurance goes up a little bit every year. It's for a 1 year term. Your house doesn't burn down in that 1 year. Awesome. You paid whatever, $2,000 to ABC Insurance Company. If your house didn't burn down, they keep the full $2,000, zero cash value. Well, what happens is on term life insurance, again, you're renting the insurance as you get closer to death. So let's say actuarially, it's 87 years old. Well, the cost of $1 million policy on a 20-year-old, I mean, what's the chances, actuarially that they're going to die? Pretty slim.
Very small.
What is that for an 80-year-old for $1 million? Well, wait a minute. I mean, he's pretty close to, he may have like 7 more years. Like, I don't know.
Mathematically,
something could happen. So as an example, and I just checked here to wrote these down. For $1 million policy, okay, on a 35-year-old male, for $1 million, $400 a year.
Yeah.
When they're 45, it's $3,000 a year. 55, the same $1 million policy, right? $1 million term, the cost of that when you're 55, 14,000.
Jeez.
When you're 65, it's 34,000. When you're 75, it's 103,000. This is every year, 103,000 a year. And normally I have, when people say, well, how can that be? Then let's go to the extreme. Okay. Let's say you're the insurance company and you're providing $1 million should an individual die and a 90-year-old walks into your office with a cane. 90. I mean, he's probably got a 50-50 chance of making it to 91, right? So, so I would say if it's actuarially 50-50, it's like, okay, well, it's $500,000. I mean, it's a risk. So then you go back, well, what if he's not 90? What if he's just 80 and it's $1 million? Well, I don't know, maybe it's 103 when you're 75, maybe 80, it's, maybe it's 200,000. I mean, the closer you get to death, the more expensive that is. So now let's go back to the IUL, which is basically, for explanation purposes, a term policy, a rented death benefit life insurance concept with a mutual fund attached to it. And the mutual fund, they promote and they sell like, oh, a mutual fund can make way more potentially.
Can I pause here? This sounds a lot like one of the big talking heads that exists out there that says buy term and invest. Yeah, so I just want to throw that out there because that's exactly what we're talking about. It's just bowed. It's a package with a bow on top that's called an IUL. So that's where we're at.
Yeah. So they sell that product, they promote that product because a mutual fund, and a mutual fund does, it has like you're not going to get a 10% return in a whole life policy. You're not. It's not contractually. They don't put that in there. Can you make 10% in a mutual fund? Absolutely. However, can you lose 10% in a mutual fund? Absolutely. I mean, I play around in the market and I mean, the market's down right now. I mean, it's not good right now. At least a couple stocks that I'm playing with for fun. But I mean, yeah, obviously, anyone knows that you're investing in stocks, securities, Wall Street. You can make money, you can lose money. The more return, the more risk, and that's just the way it is. And you can promote like, oh well, historically over time, blah blah blah. Great, you can have that conversation all day. And now they've even come out with products that are, like this indexed, and again, getting into the weeds here. I mean, index, I mean like an S&P index mutual fund, but also can have a bottom on there that, well, if it does get down, the market is terrible, we'll take you out of that and just kind of put it in a general fund, and therefore we won't suffer the losses. So you're guaranteed like that fund's not ever going to go down to zero. Okay, that's great. However, the issue is, as this fund grows over time, up and down and up and down, and we've had a couple good years, we had a little lost year. Over time, this thing's growing, and you can say that fund never lost money. Great. Well, when you're 75, that fund better make at least $103,000 because that's your cost of insurance.
Yeah.
And so what happens in these situations, and it's with every universal life, every index universal life, that as you get closer to death, that term insurance gets more and more and more expensive, and it will eat up all the money you've put in plus all the profits you've made, because it's sucking $100,000 a year out of there when you're in your 70s, and it's sucking $200,000 a year out of there when you're, if there's anything left. And contractually, if you look at the guaranteed illustration, it'll show guaranteed to be zero. So that's the main thing with an IUL, the main reason why we don't use it, the main reason why Nelson didn't recommend it. And that's kind of basically how can that be zero when you're putting in 10 grand? That's how, is because the cost of insurance eats up all of your profit, let's say, or all of your investment, all of your cash value.
So the non-guaranteed side, I'm trying to say the same thing a different way. The non-guaranteed side in an IUL is flashy. It looks good. The potential that exists there on the non-guaranteed side is numerically, numbers wise, looks better than what you would get on the non-guaranteed side for a whole life policy. But to your point, if you take a look at the guaranteed side of both of those, there's a vast and dramatically different look as that policy continues to age and grow. In a whole life policy, and again, it's the reason we use it, it's growing consistently and it doesn't stop growing at any given age number. So it's going to continue to grow until that person passes away, as long as it's designed correctly. And Mike and I are in the business of designing these things correctly. But then working with an IUL, that guaranteed side, I'm not talking the flashy potential because you don't know what the stock market's going to do in 3 years. No one does. So I'm not talking the non-guaranteed potential side. The guaranteed side, you can watch that guaranteed cash value go down and down and down until it's zero. There's nothing in it. And then you are strictly working on that potential. And to Mike's point, I mean, people get very creative with rates of percentages and rates of return over the course of time. In fact, hopefully we get to talk about that in a coming podcast and what that looks like. But you can make statistics say a lot of different things, and they're going to make it say what they want it to say. So that's what they're describing in the potential. But you need to have $100,000 in your 70s come in just to break even for paying for the life insurance that is tied to this product. So it has the potential to implode. So let's go back to kind of the topic of this podcast. I think maybe the Bushes, and this is all hypothetical speculation, Mike, but I think they potentially were seeing that. If they were only paying half their premium, they were not funding that thing. I mean, they were paying for insurance that was costing them money. And if they're only funding that halfway, that insurance doesn't change in terms of its cost. That was projected out. That is, it's set in stone maybe as they get older. And I assume Kyle was the one insured. But if they're only putting half the money in, the growth is not being experienced that they need to maintain the cost of that term insurance as it grows. So you build an IUL that's based on an agent's premiums, like how do I get more money, which maybe is the potential motivation for the agent in this situation. And then you have the client that's not fulfilling their side of the agreement. Like, I'm going to do this, and they're not. It causes the IUL to just, I have in my mind like an engine without any oil in it. Like it's kind of churning and trying to go. I don't know if that's a good example. I'm making you laugh, but it's not going to work very well. It's not going to be efficient. So I think, yeah, it's a perfect storm in this situation. This just happens to be a very famous client. And because there's a lot of money involved, we're talking tens of millions of dollars. I think Kyle Busch in his lawsuit said he put in $10.8 million into this thing. And they're not seeing the rate that they want to see in terms of retirement. And I think that's a key word in their situation as well. They wanted to see this provide them retirement funds. But as Mike's point already said, as they get older, that insurance is going to cost them more. So the growth of that non-guaranteed side has to be maintained at a pretty solid pace to pay for that insurance as he gets older. And who knows what the life insurance costs, Mike? We haven't brought this up. He's a race car driver. I mean, that is not a safe sport, I would argue. I mean, they put a lot of safety measures in, but what's the cost of insurance for a race car driver? I don't know. I haven't done one for somebody, but I can't imagine it's very cheap. So that's a whole factor in this as well that probably doesn't get brought up as often as it should. But we're down to a minute. Man, we talk a lot. So I think that's perfect. Is there anything for the cause of the good, or the good of the cause, I should say? My dyslexia wouldn't get in the way. The good of the cause you want to end with?
Let's do a part two.
Okay, let's do it. So look forward to part two. Any chance I got Mike sitting in his chair this morning. He's not in the deer blind, so we're gonna take advantage of that and do a part two. So listen in next week. We'll get it out. We're recording this right before Thanksgiving, so I know you're not supposed to date your episodes, but have a happy Thanksgiving. Hopefully you get to spend time with loved ones. And just make it an enjoyable time. If anything, though, make sure you watch the Michigan-Ohio State game and root for the Wolverines. I'll undo that, Mike. Right? Okay. All right. If you're listening, thanks for listening, and stay tuned for part two.